see you running out of reasons. Don't try to blame it on the seasons. Why you wanna walk away? When we began, swear we had something that would last. Baby, has the feeling passed? Falling in was easy. How do I make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Tried and true. Was I a fool? I know sometimes I may wonder, but I would never leave asunder a thing as good as what we have. Is it a rule? What's good is worth the fighting. There ain't no denying that you and I were made to last. Falling in was easy. How can we make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I will never let go of you. Tried and true. Oh, have you had a change of heart? Go back to the start. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Tried and
I burned out like a wandering ember. I shone bright, then my journey was over. What I sought when I ran was back where I began. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light, I'm coming home. Well, I scratched in the dirt for a while. I gained all that I knew for a price. In the end, what I found was nowhere near as nice. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the my claws and teeth. Though I elbowed my way to a seat, there'd be no kind of peace like you beside me. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Nothing's as it seems in the photo. Nothing is as sweet going solo. Nowhere I can ramble or roam could change my mind, could slow my coming home. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. Oh, I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
Straight cruising, headed for a bruising, watching out for number one. You gotta slow down and look around you, son. Today is just today and not tomorrow. Where you're going, you can rest your head. Where you're going, brightness looks big. Where you're going, truth cannot be hid. You gotta get going. Easy now. You gotta get going. Easy now. Be hard working so you can be deserving of the rest that you are given. You gotta slow down and look around you, son. Give a lot and live a little. Work with what you got. Where you're going, you can rest your head. Where you're going, brightness looks big. Where you're going, truth cannot be hid. You gotta get going. Easy now. You gotta get going.
ain't nearly halfway through. Yeah, I'm trying to get over you. Oh yeah, well I'm not nearly halfway through. Just trying to get over you, over you.
Sunrise in West Virginia, sleep talking on the front porch.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for coming, and welcome to Capstone 101. I'm looking for Kathy Harms. We are going to start with an opening prayer.
If you could all just bow your heads for a moment, let's ask the Lord's blessing on this meeting this evening. Heavenly Father, we come tonight with a heart of thanksgiving. We thank you, Father, for the work of this organization, Moms for Liberty, which has been a voice in the past year, calling out to restore us to the ancient landmarks, calling us back to the place where things are good, where the sweetness of the Lord is. And Father, we thank you for that. But our hearts remain heavy, Father, because it seems sometimes that we're in a generation that has to be called once again back to the plumb line, to the place where we've gone wrong and return. So tonight, Father, we thank you, Lord, for the work that's been done ahead of us, for the hearts that have been changed in this year. And we pray, Father, that the foundations that were established, that tonight would indeed be a capstone, Father, to bring to fruition more work that has to be done, but also the workers that will do that work. So we pray tonight for those speakers that are going to come before us, that we have ears to hear and hearts to be open to what they have to say. And we ask, Father, that they would bring us a vision. They would cast a vision that would restore hope so that we would leave here with more grace than we deserve to speak truth to a generation that desperately needs it. We ask for your grace, we ask for your help, we ask for your mercy, and we thank you tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
My name is Robin Steenman, and if it's your first time coming to one of our events, I'm the chapter chair for the Williamson County chapter of Moms for Liberty. I've been at this for just about 2 years. I'm a mother of 3. I've been married for 12 years, and I'm an Air Force veteran, having flown the B-1 bomber for a little over 1,000 hours, combat hours over Afghanistan. So called back into service once more. So the agenda, we've already heard from Kathy with her amazing opening prayer, and we pray that God blesses this event. I'll start this off, and then we'll hear from Tiffany Justice, Michael Knowles, Carol Swain, Pete Hegseth, and then we'll close it out. So this is a culmination or a graduation event for the 2022 to 2023 school year for parents. It has been a lot of work and a long haul. We have spent, since September to now, covering one ideology per month that our children face in the classroom and in the schools, and oh, by the way, everywhere else in the world. So today, the arrow, finally, I remember the first event we had when the arrow was all the way at the top. And now it is all the way finally at the bottom as we bring this to fruition with the Capstone event. And we have a little culmination video for a year in review.
Twas the night before COVID, when all through the land not a creature was stirring, except that bat in Wuhan.
Our whole mission is to inform, equip, and empower parents to advocate for their kids.
The Arizona Department of Education suggests babies show first signs of racism at 3 months of age.
To achieve equality, we need to dismantle whiteness and therefore dismantle property rights and then redistribute wealth.
It's about a relentless criticism of everything.
Some of the text messages that I got from concerned friends, some of them more on the leftist side, they were really concerned about my safety here.
To agree to this new regime, you had to change how they thought. And the way to do that was through education.
It sounds like exactly what my family fled in Cuba.
If you spot keywords such as white supremacy, systemic racism, white privilege, anti-racism, white fragility, intersectional identities, internalized racism, then congratulations, you are in the CRT twilight zone.
They're making bank on this.
And for a group who the press has deemed white supremacists, you are the most friendly, nicest white supremacist that I've ever met.
Don't go to the doctor. You'll catch the infections. We promise this isn't to mess with elections.
SEL is a thought reform program that undermines parents and replaces them with the government.
They want your children to be the vanguard of a future project that's a completely different society, and their goal to get there requires them to separate your children from you.
So social emotional learning is collecting a massive amount of mental health data on children through surveys.
Holy crap, the school building's on fire and I need to get my kid out.
But mothers were waking and started to chatter.
I did an internet search for how many gender identities are there, because it's changing all the time. In one night alone, I found 37, 64, 81, 100 plus, and infinite. What are we doing to our children? And who's going to stand up for them?
And a dad is somebody, it's a human male, speaking biologically, who protects his kids from gender ideology.
If you're not a Barbie or a G.I. Joe, you're by definition out of the binary, you're non-binary. So this is not what science is supposed to be.
This is in schools, it's in children's hospitals.
When I kind of looked beneath the hood, I realized that the rabbit hole went pretty deep and it got really, really crazy.
And they sell this under the banner of helping a child to be who they really are.
To what degree is it right here in Williamson County? And then you'll be interested to see how all of these just connect to Vanderbilt. And it's marketed to children. That was a family-friendly event.
So up to the school boards, the mothers they flew, with some mic-dropping facts and the Constitution, too.
As you may have noticed, we live in a culture that seems to have almost entirely lost its mind. It occurred to me sometime shortly after Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn and was immediately declared Woman of the Year, that the word woman ceases to have any meaning if a guy named Bruce can be considered one.
At this point, we'd had it. We weren't the merriest. But now we've all been labeled domestic terrorists.
No matter what they learn at school, if they don't come home safely, it's all for naught.
Because it turns out that the easiest way to get your discipline numbers lower, the easiest way to reduce suspensions, to reduce arrests, is to just not do it.
90% of these attacks could be stopped if we just took action. The sad fact is my daughter is not here today because there was no action taken.
If you can't protect children, innocent and true, then I promise the mothers, they're coming for you. We'll organize, mobilize across every state. We'll all use our voices until our children are safe.
The foundation of CSE is the research done by Alfred Kinsey.
Does anyone know what kind of a doctor he was? He was a zoologist.
He favored, and this is not guessing, this is on the record, bestiality, pedophilia, incest, polyamory, and sadomasochism.
So he set out to prove, probably because he was a pedophile, that children are sexual from birth, you've heard that, and believed his research was needed and that it would change all of the gender and sexual norms of society. And it has. His scientific study was on incarcerated criminals, prostitutes, pedophiles, and not normal, healthy members of society. And then he applied those findings to the rest of the population. An 11-month-old having 10 orgasms in 38 minutes. How do they know that? How do you know that a 2-year-old in 65 minutes has anywhere from 7 to 11? This is Kinsey's own work right here. Planned Parenthood is just another offshoot of this. Tennessee Department of Education is saying this is an approved curriculum. What do you think is on the flash drive? All sorts of stuff that Tennessee law doesn't allow you to teach. And you can get to porn from the Tennessee Electronic Library in 3 clicks.
It's not just sex ed anymore.
Pornography in schools? Now that's a big fight. Say that at a school board, they'll shut off your mic.
And then I show them some excerpts of the books that you're going to hear tonight. And guess what? On the broadcast, they never call me a book banner. The reporters' faces are like, wow, that's really bad. So those are some of the books that they showed, right? Those are not the books that we're talking about. These are the books that we're worried about our children seeing.
If you saw my pa and ma, everybody, you'd know they had no learning. Still, they raised a family, doing what comes naturally. You know, I never had a sex ed course, and I have grandchildren and children. How did that happen?
There was a sharp jump in all of these types of books from 600 in 2020 to 1,600 in 2021.
Genderqueer. This one was in the Brentwood Library. When consumed right, porn can help you discover new aspects of your sexuality.
School porn's really a gateway drug. Porn addiction is like drug addiction, except worse.
Speechless.
We're on the swing back, because I don't think any society can take too much of this.
Sorry, everybody. I have to obey Robin. She's a bomber pilot.
A Marxist agenda is being played out. It's black against white, or so they all shout. It's gay against straight, and they teach it in school. Pit person against person, so we all look like fools. Santa Claus Schwab has it all planned. It's they against them, woman against man.
Goal number 17, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda.
It's all about the kids. It's all about the families. It's all about the communities. It's all about the schools. We must protect the children.
Goal 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents.
They have to destroy family. So from very young age, we are taught, you know, well, biological parents, they're parents, but they're not real parents. The real parents were the party and Chairman Mao. They are absolutely doing the same thing that Red Guards did. Hate. They absolutely teach children to hate, exactly the way we were taught to hate.
Marxist revolution in the course of history has cost 80 to 100 million lives, making it the greatest human catastrophe known to man.
People say, you know, I may lose my job or promotion, and I tell people, please, today you're worried if you talk, and you mind, you may lose your job, you may lose your business. If we let it go, the next time you will lose your freedom, and the next day you lose your life. And now Nashville become the epicenter of the Marxist revolution. And we have to fight back.
The reason that communist revolutions succeed is the people going through them figure out that they're going through a communist revolution one day too late. And we are now well ahead of the curve. We're making it very difficult for them.
And whenever I meet someone young who is conservative, I said, tell me, why you are not on the other side? Oh, I think my parents, I think my church.
We're starting to win. Don't give up.
in the course of the school year for parents, we have systematically broken out these ideologies and done a deep dive on every single one of them. And therefore, you should know how to start to crumble it, and knowing is half the battle.
To all stand united is what they fear most. When we all come together, that's when there's hope. To protect our children with freedom for all, one nation under God, not under the cabal. So let's stand united as we, side by side, and tell the elite to hitch a sleigh ride. So let me exclaim as I stand here tonight, don't shy from the truth and always be the light.
It has been a journey, and it has been a year. Thank you for being here tonight to help us celebrate. Tiffany Justice is the co-founder of the National Moms for Liberty organization. She is a wife and mom of 4 school-aged children. In 2016, she stepped up to serve for 4 years on the Indian River County, Florida School Board. She believes that kids in public school deserve innovation, and parents have the right to know the union interference and government bureaucracy that is keeping that innovation from happening in their children's district. She has appeared on Fox & Friends, Newsmax, OANN, The Dr. Phil Show, and recently testified before Congress in support of the Parents' Bill of Rights. Please welcome Tiffany Justice.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robin. So my name is Tiffany Justice. As Robin said, I am a married mom of 4 kids, 18, 15, 13, and 11, 1 girl, 3 boys. 1 is graduating this year, so yay. That's exciting. Any parents who know getting your kids through school, not always the easiest thing to do. I'm really excited to be with you here tonight because really Williamson County has been the tip of the spear as far as Moms for Liberty is concerned. We started in January of 2021, as Robin said. I served on school board, and I'll just be honest with you, I didn't really understand how messed up public education was or how it was really being used to manipulate and transform our nation. But I was a mom. My kids were in a school where we had rats in the cafeteria. We had hallways that were flooding, and there were a lot of kids who would come in with wet shoes the next day. And my kids didn't because I had enough money. They had 2 pairs of shoes. So I'd put on a dry pair of shoes, and then we'd let those dry out. But there were some kids that didn't, and I said, well, why? Why is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. Well, why aren't you doing anything, principal? And the principal said, oh, the district, they really don't like when you make waves. They don't like when you ask questions. They really don't appreciate it. And I said, well, I don't care. What do I have to lose? I'll ask. Sure. And I went to the district, and there wasn't really a good reason. We had been moved off the capital plan a number of times because nobody was really advocating for the school. And so I realized, okay, so all it's going to take is us getting involved and having our voice heard, and that's exactly what we did. They tried to shut down the school. I got moms and dads together. We saved the school. It got renovated, and we got to keep that school, which was an important school in our community. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I can help other parents to get more involved in their kids' education and in their schools. So maybe I'll run for school board. Somebody suggested it. I had never been political. Most of our moms, to be honest with you, had never been in their lives very political. And I ran for school board, and I won, and boy, did I see behind the education curtain. And Tina Deskovich, who's the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, we didn't know each other. We weren't friends. Sometimes you'll hear it reported, oh, they were friends. We weren't. We're still not really. We work very well together, but we both had a very similar experience, serving on school boards as parents, and also now as a school board member, where you get to be a part of the policy making and the budgeting, but then you get to see what the implementation looks like. And your friends' kids get to see what the implementation looks like. And it gives you a very interesting and clear picture into how exactly broken our public education system is. As Robin said, I never knew the power that the unions had over our children's education, or the way that they were using the public education system to radically transform our country. Now I do. COVID happened, all of America got to see behind the education curtain. So I know COVID was a really, really difficult time for our country in many ways. And many of us lost family members, but I have been raised to make lemonade. My mom told me when something happens and you don't like it, you find a way to make it work for you. And so the COVID lemonade in this moment was American parents woke up and got to really see what was happening in their children's schools. So while moms across the country were fighting against masking and quarantining and all of these things, Robin really held the torch when it came to critical race theory. And we got to see a window into wit and wisdom, which is the English language arts curriculum being used here in Williamson County, Tennessee, and other school districts around the country. And we saw how dark and divisive and toxic it was for our children. I remember Robin said, you know a tree by its fruit. And what we are seeing in this nation is a nation of children that are very, very troubled. And so many of them go to the public education system, and we need to look at the information that they're being fed and why they are feeling the way that they are. And I think Robin's painted an amazing picture through the course of the time of Williamson County. This chapter was started in April of 2021. We started in January of 2021 of showing you all that. Just to let you know, Moms for Liberty, nonpartisan, right? We're not a religious organization. We have people with lots of different faiths. Some people don't have a faith. We have lots of different races that are a member of Moms for Liberty. One thing brings us all together. We are parents, and we are community members concerned about children. I told you about my kids. Who would have thought that the fight to protect our children and their innocence would come to a point of such violence? That we would be so ripped apart by this idea of parental rights, that you would have people like the American Medical Association fighting against parental rights, the Parent-Teacher Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's shocking. The other day, my kids came in from the mailbox, and they had a postcard in their hand. And apparently the devil lives in Denver, Colorado. He now writes me on a weekly basis. And it was in cursive. And one of the things I want to leave with all of you tonight is there's something that we can all do. What I've tried to do with my kids, and a lot of this, is get them to laugh about it. Because it's so absurd and ridiculous that we can inoculate our children by helping them to see how ridiculous it is. The truth is on our side. And the kids are looking at this postcard. I didn't know what it was. I see on the back it's an Exorcist picture of the little girl from The Exorcist. And my one son starts to read it, and the other son says, I didn't know the devil knew cursive. And then the 13-year-old said, he invented it. And I thought, okay, because they know it's ridiculous that there's some person that's writing to me wishing that I'm going to burn in hell for eternity because I'm fighting for the innocence of children. Why do they want it so badly? Why is the family such a barrier to what they want to accomplish in the United States of America? And Robin has gone through and shown you the way that our children are being demoralized. So I thank all of you here so much for supporting what Robin is doing, what Moms for Liberty is doing. From 2 chapters in January of 2021 and $500 in a back bedroom that Tina had, we've grown now to 280 chapters in 45 states. Yep. So over 100, thank you for that. They're amazing people. Over 120,000 dedicated community members that are fighting to reclaim our country and to save and protect our children's future. We are joyful warriors. We're going to fight like hell with a smile on our faces because we know our children are watching. But we will be relentless because they are relentless. They want to radically transform our country, and they will not stop. This is what their goal is. And I know that sometimes our wins are not palpable enough. We win when things don't happen, right? When we get to keep our lives the way that they are, when our children aren't being taught that just because you're a boy or a girl, your parents say so, doesn't mean that's the case. You could be a tree today, or whatever pronoun it is, 125 that you want. So I know that the wins are hard, but we need to celebrate them. And I think where Robin has brought Williamson County through all of this, through the start, through all of the media, all of the arrows that have been thrown here, we have a full room of amazing people here to celebrate tonight, learning as a community. Our mission is to unify, educate, and empower parents to protect and defend their parental rights at every level of government. And Elizabeth and Robin and Lee and all of the other members of Williamson County need your help to do that. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I hope you learned a little bit about me, why we started this organization, and really excited to hear from Michael and Pete. So thank you again.
Tiffany and Tina up at National have been so supportive of our efforts here in Williamson County. I get the question a lot of, does National tell you what to do? Like, no, not at all. In fact, I call them and I'm like, is this okay? You know, some of the things that we might push the envelope a little bit, they are always say, you know what, we trust you. And you need to do what Williamson County needs you to do. And so it's an amazing organization, and we're so grateful to Tina and Tiffany for co-founding it and for helming it. Michael Knowles is a political commentator and host of the Michael Knowles Show at the Daily Wire and the book club at PragerU. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Speechless: Controlling Words, Controlling Minds, and Reasons to Vote for Democrats, a comprehensive guide. For those who haven't seen that book, it's blank. Michael appears regularly on Fox News, EWTN, and OANN. Among other television news networks, he has lectured at research institutes and universities throughout the United States. Please give a warm welcome to Michael Knowles.
Very kind. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here tonight with Moms for Liberty. I am a longtime fan and a first-time visitor of the group. Most of my exposure to Moms for Liberty has been through social media. And Moms for Liberty have become my favorite TikTok stars of all. Those videos from the school board meetings and all the others have been magnificent, though the leftist reactions to those videos have been less than magnificent. I do not personally use TikTok because I am a grown man, but my producers have sent me countless videos of teachers, public school teachers, even elementary school teachers, taking to TikTok to complain about all of the conservative education reform bills that have come across the country. In particular, the Parental Rights and Education Bill in Florida, which very simply prohibits teachers from talking about weird sex stuff to kindergartners. Seems reasonable enough to me. Videos of educators promoting transgenderism and other eccentric sexual ideologies in the classroom, describing strategies for getting around those laws. Videos of educators attempting to normalize pedophilia. One professor from Old Dominion University was ultimately fired after taking up the cause of pedophilia, which he or she, it was a little difficult to tell from the video, preferred to call minor attraction. That was the euphemism. Now, it's great that a little bit of sunlight is getting shined onto these creeps and getting them fired. But how many more of them are there out there indoctrinating students? These sorts of viral videos, many of them posted by our friend over at Libs of TikTok, they've put to rest one of the major lies that the left has told about education reform. Namely, that these sorts of weird sexual lessons are not taking place in the classroom. The claim was always pretty weak, since the leftists would usually contradict it 5 seconds after they made the claims. They would say, the teachers are not teaching any of this weird stuff, and it is very important that they continue to do so. They are not, no, they made the same argument about critical race theory. There is no radical racial agenda being taught in the classrooms, and it is so important that it is. Those teachers deserve an award. And you've of course got to pick a lane, so we need to know which one is it. Well, now we don't need to wonder, because these videos going around are showing these deviants in their own words. And that has been too much for the establishment media. That was too much for the Washington Post, which decided to dox the private citizen behind the Libs of TikTok account. A reporter for the Washington Post, I hesitate even to call her a reporter. She's not a reporter. She's a political operative. A woman by the name of Taylor Lorenz, you might remember her, She decided to go and harass just about anyone she could find who might be associated with the woman behind Libs of TikTok. Lorenz went and knocked on the doors of this poor woman's family and friends, and then Lorenz published personally identifying information about the woman. Her name, her occupation, her religion for some reason, even her physical address. The post went so far as to hyperlink to the Libs of TikTok creator's physical address. There can be no other reason for doing any such thing other than to encourage its readers to go find and harass her, or worse. Now, the Post eventually realized they'd gone too far, so they deleted the hyperlink without issuing a correction, of course. And then they tried to deny the whole affair. But the internet is forever, and when called out for this abuse, the Post just decided to shrug it off. The whole thing was even more ironic because just before the incident, Lorenz had appeared on camera and pretended to cry over the alleged dangers that journalists face after being doxxed. This was not a Meryl Streep level performance. I don't think anyone really bought it at the time. But even if she had given a real performance, those would have been crocodile tears because 2 weeks later she turned around and did the exact same thing. What she did was even worse because while a Washington Post reporter is a public figure with a large platform funded by one of the richest people on earth, the gal behind an account like Libs of TikTok is a private citizen who does nothing other than report on these educators and other liberals in their own words. Now, I say all of this not because Libs of TikTok is the only account out there doing this stuff. I mention this because Moms for Liberty knows this all too well. Moms for Liberty knows this better than just about anybody. You are private citizens who understand the urgent need to stop our kids from having their brains washed, their bodies butchered, and their souls corrupted as a result of the way that they are being educated or maleducated all on our dime. It requires a lot of courage to do it. Because you might say, well, I'm a private citizen, I'm merely voicing my opinion, but the moment that you step a little bit too far, then some of the wealthiest, most prominent public people in the country can come out and try to ruin your life for having had the audacity to say no, to object, to try to have a voice in the education of our children. After the Taylor Lorenz incident, there were a lot of big liberal blue check accounts that followed up on the abuse by spreading fabricated quotes, advocating all sorts of terrible things that no conservative has ever said. It's very telling that when the left attacks the right, it tries to silence us, tries to intimidate us, puts words in our mouths that we never said. And when the right attacks the left, what do? We present the left in its own words. We just show the books that they're putting in the kids' libraries. We show people the curricula that are being presented to our students. It tells you a whole lot about the difference between the right and the left. The COVID lockdowns were the turning point in this fight for parental rights in education because, for the first time ever, thanks to distance learning and video classes, parents got a first-hand glimpse into the sort of nonsense that teachers regularly pump into students' heads. Parents did not like what they saw. What did we all see? We saw teachers in middle schools, elementary schools, sometimes even preschools, presenting kids with sexual classroom materials, such as the gender unicorn. Are you familiar? Of course you're familiar with the gender unicorn. For anyone who is lucky enough not to have had the displeasure of seeing it, the gender unicorn is a popular classroom handout that depicts a smiling purple unicorn surrounded by green dots with a strand of DNA over his genitals, 2 hearts over his chest, and a thought bubble with the gay rainbow coming out of his head. The rainbow, the handout explains, represents gender identity. That is, whether someone is a boy or a girl. And the green dots represent the unicorn's gender expression. That is, whether the unicorn is feminine or masculine. So far, actually, not a huge deal. Both of those things make sense to me. Boys can be effeminate, girls can be tomboyish. Not every man can be such a hulking Adonis of masculinity as some of us here. A bit of a strange thing to teach in the schools, but there's nothing particularly worrisome yet. Then we get to the DNA strand over the gonads. This represents, according to the handout, sex assigned at birth: female, male, or other. Now we've gone from a lesson describing basic facts about human nature to one peddling a radical and false transgender ideology. Next on the handout is a heart representing physical sexual attraction. And finally, another heart representing emotional attraction: women, men, and of course, other. The radical implications are endless. The handout teaches that 1, there are more than 2 sexes; 2, that sex and gender are different; 3, that no sex or sexual attraction is normal; and 4, that pretty much anything goes. Not only are those statements shocking and radical, they're just not true. The gender unicorn assignment came to public attention after a 7th grade teacher in California was caught using it. It's hardly an isolated incident. There's another handout called the genderbread person, which is a punnier name. I'll give a little credit there, but pretty much exactly the same assignment. These handouts are appearing in schools all over the country because the Biden administration is peddling them. In Pennsylvania, the State Department of Education received the genderbread man handout directly from the Biden administration, which recommended that the material be taught to 6- and 7-year-olds. The Evanston-Skokie School District in Illinois has adopted a radical gender curriculum all the way down to preschool. From pre-K through 3rd grade, the school encourages students to celebrate the transgender flag, to break the gender binary established supposedly by white colonizers, and to experiment with pronouns such as ze, zer, and tree. Tree is my favorite one. I had never heard that one before. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree. Establishment liberals continue to deny it. The Washington Post ran an article with the headline, quote, "GOP turns to false insinuations of LGBTQ grooming against Democrats." The evidence is undeniable. Liberal educators and politicians from the local level all the way up to the White House are indoctrinating extremely young kids into radical sexual ideologies. That's why they're fighting the education bill in Florida. That's why a kindergarten teacher appeared on MSNBC to complain that he can no longer talk to his 5-year-old students about date night with his boyfriend. That's why Jen Psaki literally started crying on camera at the very thought that Republicans might not let the teachers trans the kids. They're upset because the radical sexual indoctrination of little kids is happening, and conservatives are doing everything we can to stop it. So I'm thrilled that Florida politicians passed the Parental Rights in Education law. I just wish that that law and other laws like it would go further. The law is extremely popular among voters, both Democrats and Republicans, in Florida and around the country because it is so obviously common sense. Only weirdos and perverts think that public school teachers should be talking to 5-year-olds about sex. The problem with the Florida law is not that it goes too far, as the liberal establishment has been trying to argue. The problem with the Florida law is that it does not go nearly far enough. When Democrats branded the law in Florida the Don't Say Gay bill, Republicans rushed to point out that the law has nothing to say about gay. They pointed out that the word gay appears nowhere in the bill, that the bill only focuses narrowly on a small number of elementary school classrooms, and that really you could just as fairly call it the Don't Say Straight law, since the law bans all manner of sexual education in the classrooms. Republicans keep on doing this, I suspect, because they don't want to be branded as homophobes or transphobes or this kind of phobe or that kind of phobe, whatever phobe you want to be. But this line of argument doesn't quite hold up. If a kindergarten teacher reads her class a story about a family of bears, a mama bear, papa bear, and baby bear, none of us would object to that. If that same kindergarten teacher were to read her class a story about a different family of bears, let's say a family that consisted of Daddy Bear, Daddy Bear's boyfriend, Daddy Bear's boyfriend's trans polyamorous billy goat, and a poor little cub caught in the middle of it all, I think we probably would object to that. As well we should. But both books are teaching implicit lessons about sex. The first book presents sex and family as it has been understood for the entire history of civilization until 5 minutes ago. The second book presents a new and radical vision of sex and the family, divorced from our traditional norms, customs, and standards, to say nothing of the natural law. Let's say a third-grade math teacher gave his students a word problem. Word problem is, John and Sally live with their 3 sons, 2 dogs, and pet fish. How many plates do they have to set for dinner? Seems like a normal word problem. I don't think any of us would protest a teacher who assigned that. But it does have implicit lessons about sex and human relations. Now, what if the word problem instead read, Skylar's daddy, who divorced Zer mommy, now identifies as a trans woman in an S&M relationship with the nanny. How many mommies does Skylar have? The answer, of course, is tree. I think we all know that. But we would object to that being taught in the classroom. The problem would not be that the teacher exposed his students to any vision of the family, of the relationship between men and women. The problem would be that he exposed his students to an abnormal, radical, highly ideological, and false vision of the family. A vision of sex and human nature that the students' parents might oppose on moral, religious, or simply biological grounds. Despite the howls of the radicals, there is nothing bigoted or phobic or immoral about parents cultivating traditional standards in their children. In fact, it is perfectly right for them to do so. Every society has standards. Every society has norms. Every society has taboos. There is a great movement of parents taking shape in this country right now. I don't need to tell you, you're at the heart of it. We saw it in Virginia, we've seen it in Florida, we've seen it all over the country. There's a great movement of parents who are standing up for traditional standards. The standard that boys are boys and girls are girls. The standard that people are not born evil by virtue of their skin color. The standard that it's good to love your country. These parents are sick of radical educators trying to cultivate the opposite standards in their kids. The standard that boys secretly can be girls, that white people are evil oppressors, that our country and civilization are rotten to the core. Parents, very rightly, are saying, enough. There was a debate some months ago over the right's use of the word groomer. Now, in my view, I don't think this is terribly complicated. I think that if an adult has private conversations with kids about sex and hides those conversations from the kid's parents, he's a groomer. Pretty simple. But I think the word fits at an even deeper level. When conservatives say groomer, we mean that the radical adults are cultivating certain attitudes and postures and desires in young and impressionable people. That is about the most basic meaning of groomer that there is. It also happens to be the definition of education. Education, by its very nature, cultivates desire, behavior, orientation. Teachers teach something. It is simply not possible to educate students in a way that completely avoids or that is completely neutral on questions of sex, nature, and family. Those things are too fundamental to the human condition. It is not possible to teach history, literature, civics, science, just about anything else without confronting what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, how men and women interact with one another, dare I say how men and women are supposed to act and interact with one another, and so on. If a first-grade boy announces to his class that he is really a girl and from now on will use the girls' bathroom, the teacher and the administration will have a choice to make. If they affirm the little boy in his delusions, they will be indoctrinating students into radical gender ideology. If they dispel the little boy's delusions, and they tell him he can't use the girls' bathroom, they will be teaching a more traditional view of sex and sexual ethics. Either way, the school cannot avoid the question. The boy needs to use the bathroom. At a certain point, he's got to go. The school cannot hide its answer. The kids are all in class together. They all use the same facilities. They all listen to the same teacher. And the school cannot remain neutral. Whichever view it chooses to endorse, radical gender ideology or reality, the school will be making an endorsement. The purpose of education has never been to remain neutral. A math teacher cannot remain neutral on whether 2 + 2 = 4 or 15. A history teacher cannot remain neutral on whether the Second World War ended in 1945 or 1821. A high school guidance counselor cannot remain neutral on whether a student becomes a lawyer or a drug dealer. Education makes us free. That's why we refer to the liberal arts. But in order to be educated, we must be taught the difference between truth and falsehood, between good and evil, between beauty even and ugliness. As Charles Seymour once put it, quote, "Skepticism has utility only when it leads to conviction. An open mind can serve a purpose, but you cannot keep your mind open indefinitely or your brain will fall out." Education has become the central issue in this culture war because classrooms are crystal balls. They show you what your society is going to look like in the future. That's why leftist radicals have devoted so much time, energy, and money to taking over education. That's why they've worked to infiltrate and reshape classrooms and curricula for more than a century. Conservatives need to stop playing defense on education. I'm preaching to the choir, but you know it, and a lot of conservatives out there, they don't know it. We've got to stop playing defense. I applaud Governor DeSantis and the Florida Republicans for having the cojones to protect 8-year-olds from destructive sexual theories. Good on them. But it is downright scandalous that wait till 8 could ever be the new standard. It is scandalous that at age 9, we go right back to the leftist indoctrination. The late conservative philosopher Roger Scruton once described the job of the conservative intellectual as articulating what common people know instinctually to be true. Pretty easy job, but gets a lot of pushback. We know that radicals are teaching disordered sexual theories in schools. We know that's wrong. And furthermore, we know the right things to teach too. That men and women complement one another. That babies have a right to their natural mothers and fathers. That boys are not girls. Sometimes we don't want to admit all of those things for fear of being called phobic or whatever, but we all know that it's true. Stopping the radicals from preaching their madness in some classrooms is a good start, but it's not enough to say no. Teachers have to teach something. Students will be educated into one view of the world and themselves or another. Conservatives must articulate our own understanding of human nature, which does not involve purple unicorns or sexually confused gingerbread men, but rather body and soul and men and women. A vision in accord with biology and philosophy, the vision that we have seen throughout all of history, and a vision that will order students' minds toward truth, beauty, and the good life, the only purpose of education. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I believe they'll give me the cane whenever they need to pull me off the stage, but I think we still have time for Q&A. So if anybody has a question, feel free to hop up and we can take them now. Or if I was just so clear that no one has any question at all, that's fine too.
I wanted to know where is Tennessee on this whole picture? I only just moved here about 4 years ago, so I'm still trying to figure out that.
Well, that makes you one of the longest standing residents of Nashville that left around. I consider myself a veteran of Nashville. I've been here about 2.5 years. It's good. It's good. I mean, people are moving here for a reason. Just catching up with my pal Pete Hegseth over there, fled my home state as well, or right near my home state, for the freer airs of Tennessee. So it's good. You can find, homeschools, you can find homeschool pods, you can find classical academies, you can, hopefully we're going to get school choice through. We'll see how that goes. It's much better than a lot of other states. I fled Mussolini's hellscape there in California, and there, you might as well hide your children underground. Play old movies for them. They'll get a much better education. So it's good, but there's just a lot of work to do. I mean, there's a lot. We have to go much further because a lot of conservatives have still bought one of the lines of the liberals. This is one of the lines that I've said it before, we've all said it, but I think that the liberals pervert this phrase to really dangerous ends. They'll say, we don't want to teach students what to think, only how to think. And what they're saying is, we don't want to just ram our ideas down and tell people they can't think critically about anything. But the phrase itself isn't true, because you can't learn how to think until you learn what to think. I can't know how to think about history until I know a few dates and battles. I can't know how to think about mathematics and calculus until I understand how to think about numbers and basic arithmetic. So we have to teach certain basic things, and to do that we need to have the confidence to say that we can discern truth from falsehood. And so what the liberals have done, the kind of scheme that they've played on conservatives, the trick is they say, well, how are you to know anything at all? It's a kind of a radical skepticism that only we have to abide by. They never have to abide by that skepticism. And so I think it's important to recognize that while we ought to have epistemic humility, and we ought to recognize that every man is my master and I can learn something from him, we can actually know a few things about a few things. This is the premise of self-government. If we don't have rational faculties to perceive the truth, and if we don't have a moral conscience to perceive the difference between good and evil, then we have to give up on the project of self-government. This is what John Adams meant when he said, the Constitution is built for a moral and religious people. That was not just a nice bumper sticker for 1792 to put on the back of a carriage or something. That's an observation about the way constitutional government works. If the people can't discern reality, then you just can't govern yourself. And so we need to go much further. Tennessee's on the right track, but I just don't want to let Florida beat us, That really drives me crazy. We're going to let Florida's a strange state. We can't do it. Yeah. I was just down there. I was just down in Jacksonville. We got a lot to learn, We can catch up.
Refugee from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And one of the reasons that I moved here was because of people like you that exist here, very big media figures, that I said, if worse comes to worse, they'll all stand up with the massive amount of audience that they get, and they will make us a leading state in the United States and at the forefront. So where does I know Candace Owens lives here. I mean, obviously we have lots of Fox News people that are coming here. How can those media figures bind together to help our government officials choose to become a leader over Florida?
I think it's happening. I think the leaders in Tennessee are doing a great job, and without disclosing too much tales out of school or anything like that, I find that the elected Republicans in Tennessee have been extraordinarily receptive and eager to work on things. They've been leading the way in a lot of ways. And then if we happen across a story and we say, hey, we found a child gender clinic somehow right in the heart of Nashville, that's kind of weird. The Republican legislators and the governor moved on that instantly. It was just they deserve a lot of credit for it. So it's been wonderful. I mean, the downside of the balkanization of the United States is it's sort of hurtling us ever closer to a cultural civil war. But the silver lining in that storm cloud is that people are moving to Tennessee for a reason. And so I remember when I first was looking to buy a house, I was talking to my boss and friend, Jeremy Boring. I said, hey, Jeremy, my wife's very, very pregnant, and so I need to get a house. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment in L.A. He says, don't buy a house here. We're leaving. I said, well, I don't know. When are we leaving? I'm kind of on a tight timeline here. He says, no, we're getting out soon. How soon? He says, get on an airplane, go look at a house, go buy one next weekend, because we've got to get out before the end of the year. I said, okay. And I'm walking right around here in Franklin, and I walk into the bookshop. And a lovely lady behind the counter at the bookshop, she looks at me, says, you're not from here, are you? I said, what gave it away? I said, no, I'm not. She goes, you're from California, aren't you? I said, I am. And what did she say? Of course, she said, don't California my Tennessee. That's right. It's a good caution to have. But my answer, of course, was, lady, I am not your problem. I am not, trust me. And it's not just me. It's the people who are moving here now. It is not the libs. So you're seeing a clarity taking place. And I think with the political leadership and the influx of refugees coming in and the chutzpah and the courage that the people have had, the incredible organizations like Moms for Liberty, I think that momentum and time are very clearly on our side, and I think that our wins in this battle are only accelerating.
Hello, nice to see you. Any thought how to make the teaching profession less attractive to these liberals that are now in charge?
I do, actually. I have some thoughts on it. Again, I'm not on TikTok, so don't think I'm just scrolling around all day, but my producers do send me these videos, and many of them are of teachers crying. Crying, they're so upset because they no longer get to reveal their pansexual, transsexual pronouns to the 3-year-olds. And they're really, really upset about it. They say it's giving them anxiety. It's causing them to reconsider their profession. So, there we go. Job well done. We have to do that. And the way to do that is to embrace no. I'm trying to persuade my fellow conservatives of this, because no is a beautiful word. Limits are a beautiful thing. We live in time and space. We are finite creatures. Limits are what give a sonnet its beauty, okay? And when you take away the limits, you get slam poetry, which is the death of art. So limits are good. I think conservatives ought to embrace the no. And the state, far from getting its hand out of education, we need to be much more involved in education. For a long time, there were moderate-sounding, sort of squishy people who said, well, we can never wield political power to enforce our standards in the classroom, because if we ever did that, why then, hypothetically, the liberals might do the very same thing to us. I said, hypothetically, they're going to do the thing they've been doing for 100 years. That's the hypothetical I need to worry about. I'm not worried about a hypothetical, because I'm seeing it happen. And so we only have one option, and that's to fight back. And I think if we can reattain our moral clarity and recognize that certain things are true and certain things are false, and if we can get past this preposterous fear-mongering about book bans and authoritarianism. Let me tell you about book bans. There's one book banned in classrooms in the United States, and it's not Mein Kampf, and it's not pornography. You know what that book is? Of course, it's the Bible, the greatest book ever written, the inerrant Word of God, and even if you didn't believe in God or any religion at all, certainly the most important book without which you can't understand a thing about Western civilization, without an education in which you would walk into an art museum, you would have no idea what is going on. That's the one book you're not allowed to be taught. So I don't want the liberals to lecture me on book bans. Yeah, I want conservatives to embrace it. Yes, we're banning obscene materials. Yes, we're banning inappropriate materials. We're banning materials that are just outright false and presenting lies about history, because if we present students with things that are wicked and false and ugly, that's only going to harm their education. It would have been better if they stayed home and watched TV.
Last question.
Chairman of the Williamson County Young Republicans, pleasure to meet you. When it comes to younger conservatives who don't yet have that family, but they're out of the school system in which they may or may not have been indoctrinated, what have you seen as the most effective way to mobilize younger people before they start to have those children?
Cardinal Manning once said that all human conflict ultimately is theological. And so there are always these appeals to win over the youths by ignoring everything that matters. It's the kind of people who went into our churches and they got rid of all the really beautiful, inspiring stuff, and they replaced it with fake rock bands and things that are, to quote Hank Hill from The King of the Hill, he said that some of this sappy stuff in the churches, it doesn't make Christianity better, it just makes rock music worse. And so I think there have been a lot of attempts to win over the youths that have misunderstood the seriousness of young people. You point out that young people graduate, they're indoctrinated, they're not getting married, they're putting all of that off, they're extraordinarily in debt, they've been denied an education and then charged $250,000 for the privilege of being denied an education. And so they're just grasping after anything that is sturdy, anything that is true. And so I think the way to win over those people is not to, I don't know, just offer them some new tax cut or something. But I think you've got to really stir their souls. And it reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote that I always come back to. which is, he says, if you look for truth, you might find comfort in the end. But if you look for comfort, you will find neither truth nor comfort, only soft soap and wishful thinking to begin, and in the end, despair. So if the young people are in the throes of despair and they're fine with it, they're going to vote for Democrats, and that's just the way it is. But if they're looking for something else, then we need to say, look, here's why we need this education policy. Here's why we need this immigration policy. Here's why we need this gun policy. All of it is part of a coherent and consistent whole that points back to who man is, what we are made for, the purpose that we have. You are not just a bag of flesh and chemicals stumbling around in delusion until one day you take a dirt nap and turn to worm food. You know, that's the story of life that the liberal left has given us, and it's left young people in utter despair. I mean, it's so much so that you're seeing the life expectancy decline because of these deaths of despair. And what we need to say is, all that's bunk. I'm sorry that you got done like you got done, because it's bad for your bank account and bad for your brain, but it's never too late. It's never too late. And you can turn it around now. You were made for a purpose. We can help you to discern that purpose, and we can make America great again, to borrow an important phrase. All right, is that my time? Thank you so much. Wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you.
I would like to introduce Dr. Carol Swain. Strangely, her bio is missing from up here, but I don't need it because Carol has been a friend of this chapter from the very beginning. We were only in existence for about 3 months before I got a call from Dr. Swain's office saying we should meet up, and we quickly started to collaborate on a couple of events. And the first one was in November of 2021, and it was Let's Talk About Race, or Race in America. And by Keisha King and Bob Woodson, and it was an incredible event. And then we collaborated with her again for the American Dream Conference, which caused a lot of stir here in Williamson County. It was at the factory in January 2022, and the left tried to get it canceled. And but she has been such a strong supporter of Moms for Liberty and our chapter and the fight for kids. She goes all around the country speaking on this issue. Whenever you try to get in touch with Carol, it's always, I'm in an airport, I'm on my way here, I'm in Texas, I'm in this state. She runs herself ragged in the cause of defending children in the classroom. I don't know how she does it. She's not just a grandmother, she's a great-grandmother. She's the founder of Be the People Project. She's an author, a commentator, and a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And please give a warm round of applause to Dr. Carol Swain.
I bet you didn't know that Robin is my adopted white daughter. And we kind of share a very similar personality as you would expect in the family, right? And so we are out there on the front lines, and it's difficult to be on the front lines. And Robin has taken some pretty harsh blows for being someone that was willing to step forward. And she does this with small children. And I applaud all of you all that have stood by her and prayed for her and have watched her and helped her develop this chapter. And I was here, for this course at the kickoff back in September, and now we're at the graduation. And so many of you parents have attended all the sessions, or if you didn't attend the sessions, maybe you watched them online. But you are well educated now about the different ideologies and everything that's coming against your children. And so what will you do with your knowledge? That's what you need to ponder, because that information that you gleaned, it's not just for you to chat with your friends and forget about it. You need to use that information that you have gleaned to become a powerhouse. And so what would be the next steps? I would say for those of you who have graduated the course, and if you haven't graduated the course, and I believe at the end tonight, Robin is going to go over maybe like a review or at least what you all have covered. I think you have to take it into the political arena, in that you need to be involved not just in the school board elections, but also local, state, and federal elections. And unfortunately, friends, and I hate to be the one to really break this to you, you should already know it, but our Republican leaders, like I became a Republican in 2009. My journey, first I was a Democrat. If you're black and you're from the South, you're born Christian, you're born Democrat. And so I was a Democrat up until I had my Christian conversion experience, and as I grew in my faith, I became more conservative, but I wasn't ready to become a Democrat, so I became an independent. 2009, I became a Republican, and I became a Republican because they were the party for God, for nation, and for family. What you find today among Republican leaders is they're trying to tiptoe away from that. They're trying to become more like the Democratic Party, and just because a person has an R by their name or call themselves a Republican, you can't trust that. And these issues of CRT, DEI, those issues are still on the line. We don't know what the U.S. Supreme Court is going to do. We know that they will issue a decision on affirmative action involving the Harvard University and University of North Carolina cases where Asian students have filed suit about discrimination. Many of us believe that the Supreme Court will strike down race-based affirmative action. If it does, it will have implications for DEI and CRT, because if they strike down race-based discrimination, it will be because these policies violate the U.S. Civil Rights Act as well as the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, and so do many DEI CRT programs. And so you can expect that there will be a fierce battle ahead, and many of your Republican legislators will want to cave, and that's where you have to hold them accountable, because if we don't stand by our Constitution, if we don't stand by our civil rights laws, if we don't stand by these things that we know to be true, then we don't have a nation. And so you need to be ever vigilant when it comes to these issues. And so that's going to be the next battleground, because the Supreme Court will rule by the end of June. And if they don't strike down affirmative action, then I see nothing ahead to really put the brakes on DEI and CRT. But if they do, it would be a serious blow. But you have to enforce your rights. If you don't know your rights, and those of you who have gone through the courses, you know your rights. If you know your rights, then you can work to enforce them. And one thing about white folks is you're not as experienced as black folk in seeing discrimination and knowing how to document it. So you need to be able to document when you're being discriminated against or when your children are encountering discrimination. You need to know the laws of the land to be able to exercise your rights. And so that's where we are. And when it comes to the presidential candidates, and I'm going to make a confession here that will probably get me in trouble with some people, but if you know me, you know I don't care. I have not gotten behind any presidential candidate. I supported President Trump in 2016 and 2020, and I worked on that campaign, knocked on doors in Philadelphia for both of those campaigns, but God hasn't shown me what to do, and I really don't move until He shows me what to do. And so I am in a pattern of watching and waiting. And so I'm looking at all the candidates, I'm watching, I'm waiting, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I think for you all, you see that there are leaders that are saying that Republicans need to abandon the cultural issues and we need to focus on the Ukraine and focus on the economy, give up on the cultural issues. That would be a mistake, because I came to the Republican Party because they were the party for God, for nation, and for family. And if they abandon that, if the Republican Party abandoned that platform that drew me in, and many of you all, we're there because of their platform, if they become more like the Democrats, then, you know, why should we owe them any allegiance? And I can tell you that if they do make that decision, they may make that decision, it sort of takes us back to where we should be, and many of us know this already, that there's no political solution for what ails America, that this is a spiritual battle, it's a spiritual condition. We cannot put our faith in political parties. We cannot put our faith in political parties, but right now we have two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans used to be closer to Christians and moral people, not just Christians, but other religions too, that held to some moral values. But to the extent that they stray, to the extent that they become more like the Democrats, we have to give up on them too, if that is the case. It doesn't have to be, especially if you hold them accountable, because even the worst of the Republicans, they want your votes. They want your votes. Your votes are powerful, but you have to hold them accountable. You cannot give them a free pass. And so that's all I have to say. I'm the only thing standing between you and Pete Hegseth, and I want to get out of the way. Good night.
Without further ado, Pete Hegseth has done exceptional work covering the current state of American education via his book, The Battle for the American Mind, and the Miseducation of America Series 1 and 2, which is available on the Fox Nation app. He is a Fox News Channel contributor and a co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, as well as a frequent guest co-host of the program's weekday edition. As I said, his most recent book, Battle for the American Mind, included 4 straight weeks at #1. I have a little bit of a bond with Pete because he's also former military. He served as an infantry officer in the Army National Guard, serving in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay. He has a bachelor's degree in politics from Princeton University and a master's degree in public policy from the Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government, although he mailed this degree back to Harvard. Pete and his wife Jenny live in Middle Tennessee now and have 7 children, all of which they pray grow up to love God and country. Please give a warm welcome to Pete Hegseth.
Thank you very much. If I could, I would cede the balance of my time back to Carol Swain. She is phenomenal. What a truth teller. Anytime we've got a tough subject on our show, I'm not kidding, or I'm guest hosting another show, I just go to the producer and say, let's book Carol. Because she knows how to tie current events to bigger topics and historical context in a way that a lot of us need in those moments where you go, how am I supposed to feel about this? And when you understand the rags to riches story of Carol Swain, came from a family of absolutely nothing, abject poverty, earned her way into the highest of universities in this country. And then, of course, because she held the wrong views, they turn on her. She's an amazing, courageous mentor of mine who I have the privilege of calling friend. So very well done. She's amazing. Carol Swain. And I should also note, so Michael Knowles, the first time I ever met him, he came on our program on Fox and Friends in 2016 or 2017, and he had a new book. And the new book was called Reasons to Vote for Democrats. Have you ever read it? It's a fascinating read. Absolutely riveting. And I interviewed him. I said, Michael, my favorite chapter was on economics. Can you tell me about it? And he waxed and waned, as he did tonight, beautifully about economics. And then it was one of the best-selling books of the year on Amazon. I mean, he sold. Guess how many words there are in the book? 0 words. It's 250 pages of blank reasons to vote for Democrats. And he sold a ton of them. But as you can tell, he could fill that and more, as he does every day, with his wisdom and knowledge. And we need intellectuals like him on our side. I love what he said about common sense. Conservative intellectuals exist to explain what otherwise ordinary people understand as common sense. He also quoted a really famous philosopher who I didn't know who it was, but I loved the quote because it was on the back of a Bazooka Joe wrapper when I was a kid. And so I'll never forget it. It was, keep an open mind, but don't let your brain fall out. Same thing, different context. But it's an honor to be here tonight. I want to salute all of you for going all the way through this course. I guess this would make me, there we go, we can clap for that. Is this my first ever commencement address then? Maybe, although I did once give one on Fox and Friends and then they never let me do that again. But I want to, groups doing what you're doing, spending the most valuable resource you have on earth, which is your time, to get involved and invested and further educated on issues that impact your family, faith, this community, in our country. This is how we build a grassroots army of patriots and Christians and families who are willing to stand up and say, enough is enough. I will fight for my country. I will fight for my kid. I will fight for my grandkid. I will fight for the things that, until, as Michael Knowles said 5 minutes ago, were good and right and true. And that's what I see my job is on TV. I used to wear camouflage makeup. Now I wear more makeup than all the ladies in this room, with bright lights on every Saturday and Sunday morning. And I don't do it because I like being on TV. I don't really care. That wasn't my goal. When I ran a couple vets organizations and stumbled my way into being on television, I see myself as in being involved in information warfare. That's what my job is. Every time there's a story, there is a narrative, or there is a push, a rush for one particular perspective. And I don't consider myself a journalist, because I'm not a journalist, because I'm open about my biases and my beliefs and where I stand, and I give you my opinion and my thoughts based on where I'm coming from. The rest of the media stands up and says, well, we're journalists, as you know. Big J journalists, smart fancy pants, when they're all just a bunch of liberals pretending to be independents. And they think you're too dumb to realize that, which of course you're not, and they're the dumb ones, which is why I sent my degree back from Harvard. I actually did that on Fox and Friends, live on the air. My wife, Jenny, who's in the front, really didn't want me to do it. Neither did my mom. But to me, it was part of a bigger statement that we need to stop holding up institutions like Harvard University as the imprimaturs of excellence, of the standard of leadership, of the people we should be looking to, what we hope our kids will strive toward. And when I took that diploma out, I crossed out Harvard and I wrote Critical Theory University. Because if you actually go to Harvard's website right now, almost every single part of what they teach, not just the curriculum, but another word I'll talk a little bit about, pedagogy, which is not what they teach, but how they teach, is infused through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and radical gender ideology. And they say openly, critical theory. It's how every single one of our so-called elite college kids are being indoctrinated. What they're being told is the framework through which they should think. And by the way, those are future Supreme Court justices, future senators, future leaders. That's why we need to stop pretending like that's what we want. I have a new standard for hiring. Not that I hire anybody these days, I don't. Or just for common sense. Just ask someone, kind of like what Michael Knowles was talking about. Do you believe men can be pregnant? Well, 98% of Harvard graduates would say yes. I mean, that's what we're up against at this moment. And I think we need to begin to start to deconstruct all of the lenses through which we've looked at the world, which is why I usually end speeches by saying this, but I'll start with this. A lot of us reflexively give to our alma mater. You know, we remember the good old days in college, or we like the football team, or we just have a warm glow of that and we give to our, and I oftentimes talk to groups of donors and all I ever say is just please stop. Stop. Except for like 5 colleges and universities in the country, you might as well just send your money straight to Democrats and Marxists, because that's what you're funding. In fact, I know this, and I'll talk a little bit about this as well. This church is housed at Franklin Classical School, which is a classical Christian school here in Franklin, which is amazing. Which is part of the answer and part of the solution is rediscovering the lost tools of learning. The art and the process by which Western civilization and Americans were educated for thousands and hundreds of years. We used to do it in a way that created young people who understood their history, had a relationship with God, had a relationship with the big narratives and stories and poetry and literature of the past. And then over the course of 100 years, it was intentionally ripped out of the way we educated, which is why I think this, what I'm going to talk about here for a little bit will build upon, I can't build upon what Michael Knowles was talking about. The guy's got like 3 brains in one. But we'll add on to in some way what he was talking about. Because when you look at the 100-year takeover of education, it was intentional. Now, it's not a conspiracy theory in that they knew exactly where it would lead. They didn't. A lot of them didn't know where it would lead. But a lot of them knew exactly where it wouldn't lead. It wouldn't lead to biblical wisdom and faith. It wouldn't lead to the spirit of 1776. It was leading towards secularism and humanism and Marxism. Because when I wrote that book, Battle for the American Mind, with my co-author, David Goodwin. He's the president of the Association of Classical Christian Schools. So he runs an association that supports schools like Franklin Classical. And when you understand the history behind, and as I talked to him about it, he said, what we're really doing here is rediscovering something that was intentionally buried. I think of David Goodwin as an archaeologist. So think of Indiana Jones. David Goodwin, my co-author, was like Sean Connery with his dusty book and all the clues and trying to figure it out. And I was like Harrison Ford, running from the boulder trying to figure it out as a parent and a grandparent. Because I'm right there with you. And what I consider myself, and probably most people in this audience, is I consider myself a survivor. A survivor of progressive education, and I didn't even know it. Who here took social studies? Me? Guess who made up social studies? The left. Guess who started the bell ringing? Guess who started the Pledge of Allegiance? That's a whole nother story. We'll get to that in a second. I love the Pledge of Allegiance. But when you understand what they did and why they did it, it should give you a visceral reaction to what we're seeing. And you'll start to understand completely why what Michael Knowles is talking about is happening in schools today. Or completely understand why critical race theory has become predominant inside our classrooms. And there was a recent moment when it happened. And in the book, we called it the COVID-16-19 moment. Little play on word, but that moment when the schoolroom came into everyone's home, the laptop was open, the parents are looking over the shoulder of the kids, and they're saying, excuse me? What is this? This isn't education. But we didn't know because either we weren't paying attention or it was in a very manipulative way hidden from parents and grandparents because they didn't want parents to know. The question is, now that we see it and can't unsee it, what do we do about it? So over 100, when you meet the characters in this plot to take over K through 12 education, to a man and to a woman, they are socialists, Marxists, atheists, humanists, and communists. Take it to the bank. These are people with very intentional views about how society should be structured, and it has nothing to do with human freedom and flourishing and faith. And they set about identifying the schoolroom as the way to change things. When we think of Woodrow Wilson in the progressive era, Woodrow Wilson had a lot of things. Remember when Joe Biden recently said, the kids in the classroom are not your kids, they're the nation's kids? You heard him say that. Woodrow Wilson said that 100 years ago. The exact same thing. That has been the view of the progressive left. The biggest impediment to their social schemes being implemented is first God and second parents. If they can get rid of those two, then the schoolroom becomes their tool to totally upend Western civilization. And there's a certain word that progressives knew. Our founders knew this word too. I learned this word like 4 years ago, when in the project of researching and undergoing this book. The word is paideia. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I didn't read Greek or Latin. I didn't know it. There's no translation for it in English immediately, but it means the enculturation or development or education of our youngest. It's and Michael Knowles was talking about this. What is the vision of the good life that we implant on our youngest of kids? The way they look up and see a mom and a dad, or belief in God, or how we perpetuate our civilization, or do we respect authority? The types of views that churches, homes, and schools implant on our youngest. The left understood paideia is very, very powerful. And they had lived in what we write in the book is called Western Christian paideia. That was the society, the culture, which when our founders created this great country, that it was faith, it was family, it was Western civilization, it was understanding our history, it was capitalism. That was who we were, and that's what we passed along to the next generation in the schoolroom, in our churches, and in government. Beginning in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when those characters start to show up, they go to war with the Western Christian paideia. And what did they realize? They said they knew they couldn't get God out of the classroom right away. Because that's the number one problem for progressives, is because if you have people grounded in faith, understanding where your rights come from, but also understand that men and women are fallen and sinful, in need of grace and redemption, and not perfectible, they can't be convinced to pursue these utopian schemes that government will suddenly make your life perfect. That if we just do a little bit more taxation here, or a little bit redistribution over here, or we push people up a little bit and bring people down a little bit, then this workers' utopia will come of age. See, our founders were steeped in Latin and Greek and world history and literature and poetry. They intentionally didn't give us a democracy. Another buzzword of the left they use all the time. It's one of the first tells if you're talking to somebody, is whether they understand we're a constitutional republic or a democracy. Our founders understood the fallacies of democracy, so intentionally gave us checks and balances in a constitutional republic to check the impulses of pride, the impulses of ambition, of power consolidation. They knew that because they studied the Bible, because they studied other civilizations. They studied what worked and what didn't work in the body politic. They had been part of the great grand conversation. Imperfect conversation. No one's saying it's the whole arc of Western civilization is perfect, but they understood, drew from that to create a system. And it was Marxists and atheists and others that said, if we're going to remove that, we know the first thing we have to remove is God. Well, how did they do it? It didn't start with the Supreme Court removing prayer. It started with a bunch of progressives saying, we're going to start our own schools. One example we use in the book is called the Gary Plan, where we're going to subtly start to remove God out of the classroom so the parents don't really notice. They started by doing a pull-out period where they would do religious instruction in the middle of the day, but it would be off campus. And then they would come back on campus. And then they debated it in the pages of the New Yorker, John Dewey and others at that time frame, and said, well, no, in New York, I think we can get away with removing it even more directly if we allow after-school religious instruction. But all the while, they're openly debating. And the reason we know this is because they wrote about it, and they debated it amongst themselves, and effectively landed on a forgery for the cross and the Bible in American classrooms. Because if you actually looked back 150 years ago in this country, a couple of generations ago, there would have been prayer and a cross and a Bible in almost every single classroom in America. That's what they went to war against. And I'm not talking about a theology, I'm just talking about the fabric of America. Kids learn to read by reading the Bible, just like other cultures that perpetuate their paideia often do. So the progressives said, all right, if we pull, I'll go back into the Indiana Jones analogy again. You know those scenes where there's a precious jewel on a pressure plate, and if you pull it off, all the arrows are coming out of the walls and you're dead? They knew if they pulled that jewel of God off the pressure plate, families and parents would revolt and say, you can't do that. That's not who we are. So they replaced that with a God with a forgery that a lot of people revered in this country. And what was that forgery that they put on the pressure plate? It was allegiance to the state. It was patriotism. It was democracy. Instead of a cross and a Bible, it was a flag and a pledge. In fact, the original Pledge of Allegiance written by Francis Bellamy, a socialist, did not include under God. It was a pledge to the state. Flags were not in every classroom across. And listen, I revere the pledge, and I'm currently wearing 3 flags. Okay. So this is not about attacking patriotism or America or this country. We're trying to restore it and recognize what its founding values are. You see, so they went from the Western Christian paideia to an American progressive paideia. And then a lot of other things happened in the process. Then you had the Supreme Court going to work. Then you had government unions taking over teachers' unions. The AFT, the NEA over time were taken over by hardcore leftists. They used to be conservative Christian teacher associations. They were turned into unions and channeled into political forces. The unions endorsed their first presidential candidate ever in 1976. Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter had half his delegates were teachers union delegates at the convention in 76. He gets elected, and what's one of the first things he turns around and does? Creates the Federal Department of Education. The NEA in the Washington Post openly at that time says there is no Department of Education without the National Education Association. So, and then Howard Zinn gets to work with his textbooks in the 1980s, A People's History of the United States, which is basically U.S. history written from the Soviet perspective. How evil we are at every turn. If Howard Zinn isn't being taught in your kid's classroom, it's a part of the textbooks that's in your kid's classroom. I remember turning to my dad in the 90s, being like, Dad, why is Ronald Reagan always the bad guy in our textbooks? You know, and when you're a kid, you don't even think about it. I didn't grow up in a political family. The textbook is history. The teacher is shooting straight with you. This is what we learn in this school. I grew up in a conservative Christian community in a public school. I went to public school. My parents were all publicly educated. Half of my mom's side are all middle school principals and elementary school principals and teachers. That was our assumption of what we would do and what the world would look like. And it's a system that has been entirely captured. So we went from an American progressive paideia to today, as of 2005 and beyond, is a culturally Marxist paideia. Culturally Marxist paideia is what's being pushed on kids in the overwhelming and vast majority of schools across America. And I'm not just talking about public schools or government schools. And I'm talking about elite schools, private schools, most Christian schools. And it's not that they're teaching outright Marxist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the framework for teaching has been so co-opted by progressives that the way we teach is a progressive mentality. And you have to intentionally unlearn the way you were taught to teach or unlearn what you learned in order to teach a new method the way we used to teach, which is why I call it archaeology. Take, for example, phonics. Who here took phonics in school? All right, there's a few. Who here did not? Me. Okay, so around the time of me and others coming through, the new fad in education was the whole word method. Don't teach phonics anymore. I remember as a kid seeing those commercials, you know, hooked on phonics, worked for me. Remember that? I remember thinking, oh, who are those dumb kids that need hooked on phonics? And now I realize I was the dumb kid. Like, I don't know what it means to conjugate a verb. I'm sure maybe you do. Adverbs, sentence structures. I actually don't. I've written a bunch of books and I just write like I think in my head. And then there's some editor somewhere that makes sure it doesn't sound stupid. No, and then I went to Princeton and Harvard and got dumber each time. Like, you don't, they rip the basics out and then tell us the new theory is the way we should think about everything. And we strip out the essence of what has always worked, which is why what happened when they went to the whole word method? Where did reading scores go? But they don't care. A new method is the way in which, and a dumbed down populace is a very effective thing. It's control, as you said. And so if you're not even teaching people what to think or how to think, you're just indoctrinating them, you've got a lot of political control on the other side of that. How do we know that they knew schools was part of what they wanted to focus on? There was an old prohibitionist. Her name was Frances Willard in the 1880s, and she really wanted to end alcohol consumption in the United States. So she spent a decade traveling across the country and put an anti-alcohol curriculum in third grade classrooms in the 1880s. What happened 40 years later? Prohibition, the sale and consumption of alcohol was made through constitutional amendment illegal in America. The progressives understood the power of the classroom. What did Abraham Lincoln say? The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation becomes the philosophy of government in the next. And then, of course, when the state got in the business of education, who got out of the business of education? The church. The church got out of the Monday through Friday school, and they got into the business of Sunday school. And there was a famous member of the Frankfurt School, man, I skipped this whole part of the story, I'll do it quickly, who wrote in the 1930s, he said, what chance do the theists, meaning the Christians, the believers, have with their 1 hour on Sunday and 1 hour on Wednesday night against our 40 hours of atheistic instruction during the week? That has been and continues to be their view. So I skipped over the moment between Dewey and Woodrow Wilson and the Supreme Court when the Frankfurt School showed up at Columbia University. Now, who's the Frankfurt School? A bunch of Marxists in Germany who fled Hitler, landed. One of the ironies of history is that our boys are fighting in Europe to defeat Nazi Germany, and a bunch of Marxists fled Nazi Germany and landed at Columbia University in New York. What is Columbia University? It's the preeminent teachers college in America. Who was also there just before then, but also had a lot of influence at that time? John Dewey, one of the founders of the NEA and the AFT, one of the original pusher of progressive and public education in America. And what did those Frankfurt School members, what did they believe when they landed at Columbia University? They had a new theory. It was called critical theory. Critical theory was the precursor to critical race theory, critical gender theory. And so they were welcomed, by the way, in a perch position at Columbia University, and they started teaching the expert teachers who taught the other teachers who made it the standard by which we teach. Which is why a big part of what we're trying to do with this book and through this movement is disavow Americans, parents and grandparents, of the cozy excuses we tell ourselves about, it's not my school, it's not my kids are okay. I know the principal, he's a nice guy, he's my neighbor. I know a couple of teachers, they're Christians, they do what they can. And I salute everyone who protests. I salute everyone who watchdogs. My mom pulled me out of class in the 90s in the new self-esteem curriculum at our school. And I mean, parents play the most important role in their kids' education. I get it. But at the same time, when you understand what they've done and how much they control, from the teachers' unions to the teachers' colleges to the Federal Department of Education to the curriculum to the standards to the credentialing, from top to bottom, the left controls almost every inch of American education today, especially inside government schools. I'm not here to depress you. I'm kind of here to depress you, both at the same time. So it's almost like that old adage in Congress, I can't stand Congress, but I like my congressman. We have that same reflex about school. I know the public school, these schools are messed up, but not my school. Or I'm going to watchdog it enough. Here's the other problem. I don't know if this is the right group to say it to, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love the protests at school board meetings. I think it has a lot of impact. I really do. I think it's important. I think it sends a signal to kids and teachers and administrators. I think it's important. At the same time, we write about in the book, protesting at school board meetings is like charging a fortified machine gun nest with Nerf guns. We salute your efforts, but you're all going to die. Because ultimately, we like to think we live in a world where local control of education is a reality. And what they've done, No Child Left Behind, Common Core, everything, there's so many things I haven't mentioned, has created a federal pipeline from Washington, D.C. to your kid's second grade classroom. And so you can have a principal that can tweak on the margins, or a superintendent that can tweak at the margins, or a school board that can tweak at the margins. But they're already controlling the pedagogy and the curriculum and the textbooks, and maybe they don't do the pornographic books in the library for 8-year-olds, not yet. But all the other stuff is all still there, underneath the surface that we only had a small glimpse into during COVID. And so my message to parents and grandparents is, if you can pull your kids out, pull them out. Pull them out. Now, I know not every family can afford that. Are you kidding me? Which is why states like Tennessee should be on the forefront of a universal voucher tax credit for every family to go wherever they want to send their kids. Because the demand's going to be there. Here's the other thing. It's really politically popular for conservatives and Republicans. There are elected officials who will say, I'm only here because disenfranchised moms from certain groups that don't normally vote for Republicans said, you're not going to take away my kids' opportunity to get an education. You're just not. So I'm going to vote for you even if I don't agree with you on every single issue. Here's the other thing. The left knows their schools stink. They know they don't work. They know that ultimately they've been failing kids for 50 years. They know they've got a bad product. They know they're beholden to unions that treat kids as they know the stuff they're doing with gender is sick, but they can't take on their activists, so they're stuck with them. So for lovers of freedom, education is an issue we should embrace. School choice is an issue we should embrace. Calling them out for their radicalism is something we should do at every single turn. Because, and I'll end where kind of back to the word paideia, because their theories like critical theory never stay in colleges and universities. I mean, Carol Swain's been dealing with this for decades at the highest levels of universities. They'll say, oh, that's just a colleges and university thing. No. The real prize in their fight is not freshman year. The real prize in their fight is first grade. They understand pedagogy, and they understand paideia. And they understand that the affections of an 11 and 12-year-old are a lot more easy to manipulate and mold and leave a lot more of an imprint on them forever. If you can get a 7-year-old to believe they should choose their gender pronouns and that their gender is fluid and that black people are inherently oppressed and white people are inherently oppressors, that's really hard to undo when they're 15. Now, not only do you feed them that propaganda in first grade, they learn more about it in 5th, and by 9th grade they know it's true, and by 12th grade they're activists. And you talk to college professors who are conservatives or who are liberals, they'll say, the students are more radical than us because they already show up radicalized. So we should fight at the university level, and I started there, but it is our middle schools and our elementary schools, even in red states like Tennessee, even in red counties like Sumner County, where I live. I talk to parents groups there who say you would not imagine what are in our kids' schools, because the amount of local control has been lessened and the teachers' unions and their prerogatives don't stop working. So we just have to be clear-eyed about this. And I salute all of you for gathering this information and having the courage to stand up at school board meetings, having the courage to make those posts and make your position known, because that's not easy. My job is actually really easy. I get paid to give my opinion on TV. I know people are going to hate me for it. Some people like me for it. That's fine. It's a lot more difficult for a school teacher or a nurse or a line worker or a retiree to go on Facebook or go to a meeting or go to a school board and give their view when they know how much they'll be attacked. So most people stay silent. And if you're living in a country where you can't say with your mouth what you're thinking with your head, you're not actually free. And that's exactly where they want us. Scared out of our minds with indoctrinated kids. So I salute you all. Keep fighting. We're going to keep swinging away. We've got more series on Fox Nation about the miseducation of America. Carol Swain and Michael Knowles were both on those seasons, exposing the radical agendas of the left. Share it. Share the book with others who are skeptical. I'm a huge fan of classical Christian education. It's history, it's philosophy, it's theology, it's Latin, it's Greek, it's penmanship, it's cursive. You know? It's respect, it's dignity, it's wisdom, it's truth, it's beauty, it's virtue, it's the Bible, it's the great men and women of history. Most kids going through school today, do they know who Abraham is? Or Moses? Or who the 12 disciples were, or why it mattered? Or Roman emperors, or the Crusaders, or the Reformation? All the things that made us who we are, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, and why they came here, and what it meant to them, and what they fled. If we don't know our past, then we will be shaped by those who want to create a different future for us. And right now, they're using the classroom to do it. And last thing, we need churches to get involved in the education environment. Talk to your pastors, talk to your fellow parishioners about getting churches back in the Monday through Friday business. Because when we gave that up, we gave up a lot. I'll take some Q&A. God bless you guys so much.
I just wanted to let you know that we used your series on education as a Bible study.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
When you were mentioning Padea School, my kid actually went to East Nashville High, and she graduated. I was one of the blessed people who got out the hood and got to go from East Nashville High in Davidson County to Ravenwood High School here in Williamson County. So I brought the hood to Brentwood in essence. But my daughter went to a certified Padea school where they humiliate children. And one of my daughter even talks about how she still talks to the girl named Tiffany, who in their social emotional learning, degraded and embarrassed kids, showing how poor they were, and whose father's in the home and who isn't, and who's on welfare and who's been homeless and who's been this.
As part of social emotional learning.
Correct. That's their anti-biased week. And mind you, my daughter's 25 years old. So this has been going on, y'all, for a hot minute in my kind of neighborhoods. They start with us poor kids, and then they work up here once they realize they can use and abuse us. Carol Swain, I have to give my props to you wherever you are. Thank you for being a face for people like me, who we're forgotten about every election cycle. We're scooped up, we're promised, then we're forgot about for 2 to 4 years. And yet we pay the price for all these bad policies, and we're kept in this same cycle. I was blessed to come out of it. But when you're talking about school choice and talking about vouchers, you got a pesky problem called Title I. And when you get Title I into these private schools and into Christian schools, they can dictate what you teach.
Which is why you have to make sure that money goes to the parents and then
Correct.
to the school.
But how is that going to work? You know how they get. They ain't going to, you know what I'm saying?
You are totally right. And so
because they've promised us stuff and they never deliver on it. So this is like, so when I tell people, be wary of Padea school, when you hear the word Padea, and people are like, what's that? And I had to explain what it is.
I'm going to talk to you after, because I don't know what you're talking about not in a bad way, as far as what a Paideia school is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about Paideia in the context of a philosophical term.
But that's what they're using it as when you're talking about cradling and teaching. And
it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
That's what they were doing. That's what they called it, a Paideia school. And it was introduced because East Nashville High and East Nashville Middle was a magnet school. And then they changed it. And this was when my daughter was like in 7th grade. So they changed it at that point. My son had already graduated in 2011 when it was a, I guess what I called a giant daycare center when he graduated from it. But when she got into the junior high is when they changed it to Paideia school. And this is where all this communistic crap started coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go in there like guns a-blazing, but I was the only mom. Because, half of the moms ain't involved, grandparents, aunts, everybody else is raising those kids but the parents.
No, thank you for the question. I mean, anti-bias, anti-bullying, anti-racism, those are all the phrases they use to insert issues that divide us. I love what you said, by the way, when you pointed over to Carol Swain. And you said, thank you, Carol Swain, for representing the people that look like me, okay? You don't look like Carol Swain. Exactly. That's my point, is that you connect with Carol Swain because of who you are as human beings in your soul, not because of superficial color things that the left wants to remind us are what should define us. And that's exactly right.
Hi, my name is Erin Watkins. I'm a retired Army Master Sergeant. Just
add attention, everybody.
This past weekend, I had an opportunity to speak to a friend of mine. I don't think she realized that I'm not a Democrat. She mentioned our previous president and couldn't say his name, so I knew I was in trouble. But anyway, I use the term opportunity because she's also a school teacher. And I was trying to think of what could I say to her to bring up the topic of what our kids are being taught, what she personally is involved with in teaching our kids. Do you have any tips on how I could gently broach the subject and kind of interject conversation about it?
I've never met a gentle master sergeant from the Army. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for your service, by the way. Really appreciate that. I mean, I would, first of all, you could just say, I read this book and I really would be interested in you taking a look, because the biggest feedback I've gotten is from public educators who've read the book. And I always get the, hey, Pete, I read your book and I'm a teacher. And I'm always like, oh boy, here we go. 99% of the time it is, thank you so much. That's exactly what I've experienced. I did what I could where I was, but I didn't realize how big the problem was. Day to day, I was building my classroom plans, working with the curriculum I was given, which I had no control over how to develop. I was getting certified by organizations that told me what I needed to do to get certified. And I love kids. So I wanted to get in the classroom and do right by kids, and I did the best I could. I didn't know. So I think it's not that you got to come in with, no one reacts well to coming in guns a-blazing Master Sergeant style. But just sort of saying, hey, I know you, love you as a human being, would love for you to check this out and let me know what you think about it. Because think about in any profession how many people do things because they love a certain aspect of it, but have never always thought about the overarching way in which it's used. From, any industry to television to whatever. I think that might be the case for more people than you think, and who are looking for another alternative.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm 20 years old, and I have a degree in criminology. I've noticed throughout my time on Earth, which hasn't been very long, that people my age, we don't have a leadership mentality anymore.
Don't have a what? Say it again?
A leadership mentality. We won't do anything until we see someone else our age do it first, which is why in February I announced my candidacy for school board in my county.
Nice.
Thank you. But I primarily did that because when I was in school or when I was growing up, I had a mother who was also a drill sergeant in the Army. She instilled in me the love for education because she came from a family who were very poor, and each and every one of them made it out with a college degree and knew what it meant to be an American. So I guess my question to you is, we're in a time right now where being young is you're either left or you're right, you're either moral or you're immoral. How do we encourage younger people to stand up? Because younger people are the ones who are being attacked, younger people are the ones who are being indoctrinated. Younger people are the ones who are being told if you don't think this way, then you're not right. And I think it's really important, and that's part of my candidacy. It's not necessarily to try to fix the education system, but it's to encourage those who are my age to understand that you have a voice and you're in America and you have the opportunity to run for something to make a difference. So with that being said, how
Yeah.
would you encourage younger people my age to actually step up and run for the offices to encourage change?
Do you harvest ballots from outside of your district? I'll vote for you.
I do not know.
Good for you. And I think, I mean, first and foremost is if your house is on fire, you don't call the fire, I mean, you may call the fire department, but the first thing you're going to do is pull your family out of the fire and save them. So I think often for parents and grandparents, too often conservatives have looked to political leaders to change the trajectory of things. You know, Andrew Breitbart once said politics is downstream of culture, and that's true. But my pastor, Chris Durkin, added on to it one Sunday when he said, and culture is downstream of religion. Meaning whatever religion you have, whether it's a real religion or a false religion, that is what drives your culture, which in turn drives your politics. So I think for most families, and in most cases, the most important thing you can do with the house on fire is change who shapes the heart and mind and soul of your kid and your grandkid in your area, which in your case, I presume you don't have a family yet at 20, is to do everything you can where you are to help families do that very same thing with their kids. So I love that you're running at a local level to affect things with people you care about and you love. Because too often we say, well, Nashville's going to fix it, or Washington's going to fix it, or that guy who I really like is going to fix it. No, you have to fix it first, generationally and generation after generation, kid after kid. So, and I, frankly, with the way in which most of your generation has been educated, I don't want a lot of those kids running for office until they learn something. So usually I'm not a big fan of young people running for office because a lot of life is experience. But in your particular case, if you're saying, I've just been through it and I know what can be done to improve it, good for you. And I salute you for it.
Hey, Pete, thanks for being here. If the left controls it all and we walk away from the system and we put our kids where we need to put them, and we raised 3 boys, and we did it all. We did public school, homeschool, Christian school. I'm worried about, and we need to leave the system. We need to get our kids out. We need to not sacrifice our children. We cannot do that. We've got to put our foot down. We've got to stop sacrificing our children. But how do we deal with the system that's left and a lot of these kids that are in the system and they're coming out and they're going to go side by side with our children and our grandchildren when they get raised and are in the marketplace, and these people are going to be leading and coming alongside of our kids. I've heard parents say, well, we can't just abandon the system because then we've left it all for naught. I mean, they'll disintegrate and these kids won't have anything. But I said, you want to sacrifice your children to help lead those children out. So how do you address the kids that are left? Anything you see that we can do in the future to come alongside that school system?
It's a great question. It's something Carol and I have debated and discussed a lot, and I respect her opinion on it because she raises that very same point often, and rightfully so. I would not argue that we should abandon those kids at all. We should keep fighting for that. The problem is the status quo is them saying we need to do all these things with all this money over all this time, and the scores keep going down. Like any organization that was run that way would be out of business 40 years ago. So protecting it and saying, well, don't do school choice is an argument for what? The status quo? Because the status quo is failing a generation of kids who are now just can't, it's not that they can't just read and write, now they're being indoctrinated as activists on top of that. So I think school choice is a huge part of it because kind of like the Field of Dreams scenario, if you build it, they will come. If there is demand amongst parents where the dollars actually follow the kids and you don't allow the government to get in the middle of it, there are plenty of people out there I know, and we've seen it through this book and other, who are saying, I want to start a school, I want to get involved. What's the biggest impediment to that usually? Money. You know, people can't afford to pay the tuition. People don't know how to raise the kind of money to start the school, a brick and mortar school. It's not an easy thing to do. If the dollars are following the kid and parents are voting with their feet, and the supply starts to meet the demand, at least now you start to even the scales a little bit. And you still fight to bring classical types of learning into government schools, in public schools. In fact, that's one of the things that Governor Lee and Speaker Sexton have talked about here in Tennessee. Why don't we bring classical learning methods into, here's another idea that Tennessee's talked about. How about we stop taking federal education dollars? Stop taking them all together. So then we don't have to do the bidding of Rome. We do our own thing here in the state. We decide what our standards are and how we teach our kids. Now you're not leaving those kids behind. Now you're starting to give them real history and real phonics and real math and none of the critical race theory nonsense. And so you're part of the solution there too, while giving an alternative for parents who, while the house is on fire, want to find somewhere else to put their kids. So my call to get out of the schools is not one to say abandon. In fact, in red states like this, there's a lot more we can do, and I hope we put legislators' feet to the fire. There's always another excuse to not go full universal choice. Because they'll say, what about this? They're going to attack you no matter what. For any small step you take, take the big step that is proven to be not just the right thing to do, but politically advantageous as well. And we call it in the book, I actually think, so to leave you on a not a pessimistic note, the darkest days in American education was the 1970s. In the 1970s, they almost outlawed homeschooling completely, and there were 0 classical Christian schools in America. Just as far as philosophy of education is concerned. And then some parents got together and rediscovered classical Christian education, other forms of education. And now there are millions of kids that do classical homeschooling in the country. There are thousands of classical Christian schools across the country and growing every year. America is never turned around by the majority of people. It's always the 1, 2, 3, 4% of people who have the courage, conviction, wisdom to understand the moment they're living in and the courage to stand up for that conviction. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4% that we need to train up in the next decade or two through other schools that teach real education while also fixing it for others. Because that clash is coming. It is. I don't like that idea because I've got 7 kids in classical Christian education where they're going to have a certain understanding of their place, their relationship with God and their place in history. And they're going to be coming out of this at the same time as millions of American kids with a very different view of the world. I don't like that reality. I don't want to live in that bifurcation, but it's the reality of our moment right now. Hopefully conservatives will stand up and try to do more. Maybe one more?
I appreciate you being here, Pete. So I have a unique outlook on education because I had the blessing to be able to go to private school for the majority of my schooling, but I wanted to be cool in the 8th grade, and my parents allowed me to go to public school, John F. Kennedy and Antioch High School. And 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, mind you, I was a straight A student all the way through. And then public school, social pressure is so intense, and you're a fish out of water because a lot of those kids grew up together. My grades went from A's to D's. And then, of course, my parents, they said, no, you're going back. And, of course, grades went back up. So I know a lot of the talk and chatter about being able to, get back to classical teaching is great, especially biblical, because that's the school I went to. But the associations, the trainings that these teachers have to go to, do you see it possible to actually create some alternative associations that will become the primary and then essentially be able to decouple the state from those associations as well, much like your Arizona's, Ohio, and et cetera?
It's a great point, and the right perspective. You're basically talking about an alternate ecosystem. If we try to, and that's when I say leave, I'm not just talking about parents out of schools, I'm saying all the system, leave the unions, leave the teachers' colleges, we have to create our own. And there are some trying to do that, like Hillsdale, the Association of Classical Christian Schools is trying to create their own accreditation. Even the SAT has abandoned critical reasoning. They no longer measure it on the test, which was the whole point of the test, because they had to align it with the latest edition of, not Obama's one, but of Common Core. So the guy who ran Common Core left Common Core, and then he went to take over the College Board, rewrote the SAT to fit with the Common Core. So you can only pass the SAT if you know Common Core. So then every school goes to Common Core, which is basically a federal consolidation of education. So the classical movement has the classical learning test, which is what the SAT used to be. And more colleges are recognizing the CLT, not a lot, but it's an alternative, as a better predictor of college performance than the SAT, which is now just another test you can study for, which the SAT was never really one you could necessarily study for. So new teachers' colleges, new tests, different curriculum, new schools, alternate ecosystem, all while trying to get inside those government schools as well and make them better for the kids that don't have a chance to leave. One last thing about social pressure too. I mean, as a parent who's got kids who are about to be teenagers, I remember thinking, my wife and I sitting there going, okay, when are we going to let them get phones?
Yeah.
No. First it was, like 5 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago, it was like, well, 13. Now it's like never. Because I just think of the amplification effect of that education and then the social pressure on social media. We only have so many years to form and mold our kids, and why would we hand it over to a Chinese app company? And you just got to stop. And that doesn't mean sheltering your kids from the world, or that they can't reach you if there's an emergency, or they can't have friends. It just means, why would I hand a portal to everything the world has to offer into the hands of a kid? It's devil's playpen. You're exactly right. I know I wouldn't have been ready for it, and I know my kids aren't ready for it either, no matter how hard I work with them or how much I want to trust them. Or not trust them.
Hi, Pete. My son goes to a classical school largely because I read your book and a lot of David Goodwin's great research. So my question is, how do we get more classical schools here? There's only about 600 private schools in Tennessee, and when we achieve school choice, which we desperately need, we need charter schools, but we also, need more private schools because everywhere has a waiting list, and even homeschooling is just not always an option for some parents. And I don't know if you remember my email to you where I was talking about schools being a burning building, but obviously, schools being a burning building. We've got to get our kids out, but we also have to be carriers of water, and put out the fire.
Hold on. I think I stole that analogy from your email.
I know. It's good. It's okay. I stole it from James Lindsay. So, it's okay. We just keep it going there.
I recycle good stuff all the time.
We need more private schools here. How do we get them here? And how do we make it easy for them to come here? Because private schools are having a hard time coming, setting up shop, getting land to build on, getting through, charter schools can't get through to school boards to get approved here. How do we help them?
That's what's happening in Sumner County.
Yes.
There's a charter school, classical charter school that wants to be authorized, and because of the educational establishment to include on the school board, which is run mostly by Republicans, but certain types of Republicans, who are controlled by the unions, because the union plays both sides where it needs to play both sides, they won't allow this classical charter school to be open. So it's not as simple as saying all the time, if you build it, they will come. Political leadership at the local level, statewide leadership, I love Governor Lee, but we should be leading all the way on education. There's no excuse to be given. There's no better time later. This should be the most fertile soil for schools and church planters and school planters to want to come to pour into kids, because the demand is there. And when you give that full school choice, and then you create tax incentives or opportunities for schools to start, classical schools is an example. Thank you for what you're doing, and people like you will start the schools of tomorrow like people 40 years ago started schools with 12 kids in a kindergarten classroom, and now there are 500 kids, with generational change in that community, because classical schools don't just educate the kids, they educate the parents, who then realize what they don't know, and then they want to learn it again, because the first thing you learn when you walk into a school is When can I go back to school in that context? Because I didn't learn anything. Are we done? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I echo that. My daughter goes to classical school, and she's inspired me to. I try to write her lunchbox notes in cursive now. It's not working very well, but going back to school myself. This concludes the 2022-2023 school year for parents. A quick word to properly close it out, and Pete talked a lot about what you can do, and I want to talk also in Williamson County what you can do. But the concept of the school year for parents, it didn't start that way. It actually started in my mind as the Battlefront Initiative, because there is a war for our kids. There's a culture war going on, and the front lines goes right through the children of America. It's a war for our children, and there are so many battlefronts it makes parents' heads spin. We covered CRT in all of 2021. It's like a year-long focus. But then when you start like, whoa, gender ideology, restorative justice, CSC, and that's why we took on this school year, is to break those battlefronts down one at a time. And then in April, we covered Marxism in education. So if you think of it as a war, then those individual ideologies are tactical. They're the tactical tools. But Marxism in education is the strategy. That's the strategic vision. It's been going on for hundreds of years. The tactics have changed. Those are very 2023. Transhumanism, girls can be boys and boys can be girls. Another way to look at it is this graphic that we debuted last month in Marxism 101. It was an excellent event. And if you missed it, all of these events are online. But if we have a Marxist pedagogy, then those are the pillars propping it up. Just like those are the tactical battlefronts in a strategic war, those are the tactical pillars propping up Marxist pedagogy in your child's school, if they're going to a government school. That's something else I learned from Pete. I'm not going to say public school anymore. It's government school. So, Sun Tzu said, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither, you have no chance. So when we founded this chapter, I think we kind of knew ourselves, but we might have known neither, because we've learned a lot about ourselves along the way. But if there's really a war for our children and there's many battlefronts, if you have any prayer to win it, and it may take 100 years, but you have to know yourself, but you also have to know the enemy. And that's the whole point of the school year for parents. We approached every ideology from multiple angles. We spent hours on it. And if you need to get smart on any one of them, if you missed a month, it's all posted online. But you've got to know the ideology better than the leftist foot soldiers. And that's actually not hard to do. They just kind of spout the phrases that they've been brainwashed with. But if you understand the depth and the breadth of the issue, it's very easy to make their head spin. They'll just sit there in silence. So how do we do? Everybody's got a report card on our chapter over the past year. And it's kind of some 1980s nostalgia there. But in it, it lists out literally everything that we've done in the school year for parents for every month. And it's a lot. And most of it, in fact, all of it is online and easily found because we recorded it. We want it to be there so that when you're like, gender ideology, I think there's a white paper about the true statistics on suicide for teens experience transgender dysphoria. That white paper is in our toolkit. You can find it. Or you can reference the video, and we say it there. You can find the truth data on all of the issues on the website in these parent toolkits. You can find the blogs, the Sunday posts, continuing on. So every month, we had a book club. So our book club covered a book, usually by a keynote speaker, or a book that we felt best covered the issue. We did a 101, And in many months, we did a 102 as well, a virtual 102, because a 101, the issue was big enough that the 101 just didn't cover it all. So we felt we had to do another one. We did a blog, a parent true or false quiz to basically start with a falsehood and then work backward to the truth. Is gender fluid true or false? Okay. So in the blog, it answers the question, but it gives you all the science and the facts behind that answer. So that when, a reporter asks you, which is done many times, the standard of care for gender dysphoria is instant gender affirmation. False. And then I can say this, and this, because I have worked backward from that falsehood better than they have. So the true-false blogs are really designed to help you argue against the narratives, and that those debates have to happen. Also, this just kind of happened organically. I didn't plan on it, but there's a Sunday post for every ideology as well, because it just so happens that 2,000 years ago, the Bible answered every single one of them. And I didn't plan it that way, but I just discovered it along the way, and so I started writing a Sunday post for every month. So in the end, we have done 8 101 courses, 5 102 courses, 7 books, 7 true-false quizzes, 7 Sunday posts, and 8 total toolkits. And where can you find all of that? In the toolkits, right there on our website. Resource library at the top. Resources, scroll down at the top one, first entry. So that's where the toolkits, and the toolkits lives the blogs, the 101s, the 102s, and all the videos that we think would be helpful to you, as well as white papers, articles, you name it. I also have an announcement to make tonight. The Williamson County Schools library database is completed. So we undertook this. One of our longtime members spent hours on that Follett database. If you've ever tried to look up the library books that are in your kid's school going through Follett, it's a multi-step process. You have to go step 1, step 2, step 3. We even did a 102 about how to do it. But this is done for you. You can find it on our website, /books, and you can search for books by title, author, rating, and in what school it is, elementary, middle, or high school. And that's where you find it. It's also on the pull-down menu. So back to this graphic, if you notice, I changed the words across the top, cultural, Marxist, paideia. That can be interchanged, but when you change it from pedagogy to paideia, it takes a little bit more seriousness, even more than the one before it. Paideia teaches, like Pete talked about, a worldview, what grounds you, what guides you, the guideposts in your life, the touchstones in your life. And right now, it's propping up that kind of a worldview for our kids. If you go to the father of Marxism, Karl Marx, he believed in God, actually. He had a Christian upbringing. But when you look at his writings, his poems, he wanted revenge on God. He likened himself to Lucifer in Isaiah, wanting to put his throne above God's. And then further in his writings, and this is from the Communist Manifesto, he detested families. And he detested religion. And this is the worldview, the paideia, informing our kids in government schools. And that is why it does not feel like a battle of right and wrongs. It feels like, to borrow from Tucker Carlson, a battle of good and evil. And it is. Because we've said this so many times in the last 2 years, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It is against the rulers, against the authorities, and against the powers of this dark world. It is happening in the heavenly realms right here on earth, and our kids are the target because they are defenseless and they are the most vulnerable. So what do? You don the armor. You don the armor and you set your feet, and you have to fight back. She Van Fleet. You have to throw sand in the gears, James Lindsay. And you have to join the insurgency, Pete Hegseth. You can't do nothing because our kids and our country are on the line. And Pete talked about, well, actually it was Bev that talked about what happens when your kids grow up and they join the workforce with the kids that went to the government school. What happens then? Well, guess what? Kids going to government schools still vastly outnumber kids in any other genre. So if we do nothing and we raise free, critical thinkers with a godly worldview, we have raised them and set them free as a persecuted class. They will be so far outnumbered, they won't have a chance. So we have to fight. We were made for a time such as this. And there is no greater cause than our kids. I've told my kids, you are so important to me, I would lay down my life for you. I would do anything. And it's true. So how can you fight back? Well, of course, I'm going to make a plug to join our chapter. We have regular membership. Follow us on social media and engage with us on social media. We do battle on Instagram and Twitter all the time. We get called everything in the book. Join the conversation and fight back. Go to the True False quiz. If it's about restorative justice, check out the True False blog and start hitting them back with the facts when they throw out the falsehoods. Sign up for our emails. We put out a great newsletter. I know, because I write most of them. They take me about 3 hours on average each to put those out because I want to give you the very best information possible and I want to make it interesting. So sign up for those because guess what? I also don't post on Facebook very much because in our Facebook group, I am shadow banned. So the newsletter, the email is really the greatest way to hear from us. Volunteer. The good news is we have a lot of new volunteers and we need more. What is your gifting? What special thing has God given you that you enjoy doing? And then, do you like writing? We could use that. Do you like social media? We could use that. Do you like parties? We can actually use that too. Because we need somebody to help our presence be known to the county in the Christmas parade next year. Pride can't dominate that again. Moms for Liberty's got to be there. And we need somebody to head that up. It may sound unimportant, but it's so important because you've got to let other parents know that, hey, we're here and you're not alone. Come join us because you're the majority. And that's how you make a change. If you don't have time to volunteer, then donate. If you can spare the change, because events like this do cost money. Websites do cost money. That library database was a generous donation from somebody in this room who felt moved to make that available to parents. And that is going to be an incredible resource. And we are ready to take that web template and export it to any other chapter that can use it. Calls to action. We have one for Monday next week. Show up at the school board. Because guess who's been dominating the school board lately? One Wilco. The left. It's time to be heard again. So answer the calls to action. You did in record force for the Franklin Boma. For the Pride Festival. We need more of that, and I promise, the fastest thing that makes me mad, pisses me off, is when somebody wastes my time, because I don't have a lot of it. I will never, ever, ever waste your time with a call to action. If I'm asking you to be there, it's because I think it's really important. And then lastly, talk. Talk to friends and family. We hear that over and over again. Friends, family, neighbors, but I'm going to add strangers. There's somebody in this room, we were shopping 2 weeks ago at the mall, and because I hate shopping, and I needed an outfit. So I owe this to her. But we're checking out, and she's like, did you hear about library books in schools? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm just going to go over here. But the cashier was like, no, tell me about it. And they had a 10-minute conversation. And that was a person that was informed right there and won to our side. Or maybe if she was already on our side, she was more greatly informed and maybe moved to action. So talk to perfect strangers. I'm not good at it. I'm really kind of socially awkward at it, but I'm going to work on that because that's part of turning the tide. So, and after you have done all that, because it's going to get harder. I mean, who knows? So some people think they're going to go from a cold cultural revolution to a hot one. The fight is not over. It's just beginning. The tide is turning. I sense it. I hope you do. But we may be fighting from the stairs and having given it everything we've got, and it's not working. And to carry Ephesians chapter 6 forward, and after you have done everything, stand. Just stand. And we hope that you will stand with us, our chapter in Williamson County, as we go forward into the next school year. So without further ado, if I could get everybody back up to the stage. And everyone has one of these. If you guys could humor me for a photo op. I know. There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and giving of your time tonight. Also, there's books for sale in the back to be autographed by the authors, and there's merchandise for sale. We got brand new stuff. Please take a look at it. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next year.
Just one more comment we would like to make for Robin Steenman, who we own all of this for. She puts so much of this, her family, her children, everything, she puts on hold, and I know because I see it all the time. But this is really all her. Love you, friend. And this was Genevieve's idea, the flowers. I totally forgot about it. And Tiffany, because without this, we wouldn't be here either.
That's why you sleep at night, right?
Yes.
Work so hard.
Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Dan, can you put the lights back up?
First rays of the sun hit the fresh green leaves, and a rabbit not many weeks old eats some greens, shows some trust to a perfect stranger, and I wanna feel and see more, but I'm trapped inside. I'm a prisoner of the past, though I know that things don't last. I'm going home, but I don't know the way. If I'm lucky, I'll live halfway. If I'm unlucky, I only have today. What kind of weird plan is this? Needs to be shown, there's nowhere to be known. And the desert lands of the Western Kingdom leaves me cold. Gone is the old, long live the old, and I'll never do what I'm told to, unless the voice comes from within, combined with a notion of begin. The inner room is cold and I'm dead numb, deaf and I look out across the water, I smell the salt, I feel the breeze, but in my heart I hear the calling of my old home, Tennessee. We don't know where these rivers flow, or why the wind chooses when and where to blow. The sun is gonna rise each and every time, but I've still got Tennessee on
Can we get the chapter members up here for a photo, please?